Peeping Tom is an English horror thriller directed by Michael Powell. Mark is a serial killer obsessed with filming his victims' terrified looks in their final moments. The film was released to negative reviews, with critics dissing it as an exploitative film, but since has gained a lot of respect from audiences and critics alike. Guys, welcome to this first edition of Garage Slasher-thon. For those of you who don't know and who are new to the channel, every month of October, I pick a theme, and for every day of that month, I'll watch a movie pertaining to that theme. The first time I did it, it was zombies. I watched 31 zombie movies. Then it was Stephen King, 31 Stephen King movies. Then it was vampires. And now we're at slashers. So every day for the month of October, I'm going to be reviewing a slasher movie. Today we're talking about Peeping Tom. First time I watched this movie, I know it's a really influential movie. This came out the same year as Psycho, which is interesting because in America, Psycho kind of was the hot thing. Everyone was talking about Psycho. And that same year, you had Peeping Tom across the ocean in Britain, and it was sparking some controversy there. I don't really think one created the slasher genre. I think it was kind of both of them put together. 1960, that's kind of where I think slasher movies became a thing. Like I said, this is a very influential movie. There's countless hours of Martin Scorsese praising this movie, saying it's one of his favorite movies of all time.
Because it gets close, very close to the heart of the impulse deep within filmmaking.
Just from the opening of the movie, you can tell, like, wow, this is really where it all started, because that opening where you're getting the perspective of the camera lens, it really reminded me of Halloween, which is a movie that's coming up, spoiler alert. But not only that, so many movies have borrowed that opening that's a POV. I think of the Batman that came out just recently, the opening with Riddler. That whole thought of just opening your movie with a POV of the killer, it's such like an influential thing. And just like Psycho, this movie deals with a lot of similar themes, which is why it's kind of interesting that this came out the same year as Psycho. Both movies kind of have this charismatic guy portraying a serial killer, and there's a lot of similar themes like sadomasochism and Freudian relationships with your parents. All those kind of themes are both in Peeping Tom and in Psycho, which is really interesting that of all times these movies could have came out, they both came out the same year. But how does it hold up today? Is it good? And I'm kind of going to be doing the same thing when I talk about Psycho. When I review Psycho, there's plenty of people talking about the influence of Psycho, but I'm going to kind of focus on how it kind of holds up in today's standards. But for Peeping Tom, does it hold up in today's standards? I don't feel like it does. There's no reason to watch Peeping Tom because so many modern filmmakers have since paid homage to Peeping Tom. Even a movie like Nightcrawler, this really reminded me of Nightcrawler. There's so many movies that kind of borrow a lot from Peeping Tom, so I do respect it for being so influential, but there's kind of no point to watching it. There's still those kind of dated elements from movies of that time. That's not to say it's a bad movie. It's not like a movie that I watch and I'm like, whoa, so boring. I wasn't bored throughout the movie, but the elements that were surprising for the time were already kind of spoiled for me because I saw modern filmmakers kind of use those elements. The first act of the movie is probably my favorite act of the movie because you're kind of just getting a day in the life of this creepy guy. And he has a very normal life. Like, it opens with him killing a woman. Not very normal. Guys, I do not condone the murder of prostitutes. But other than that, he's just a guy who's really obsessed with film. He makes his home videos. We find out that he has a stack of collection of his dad's home videos. And then other than that, it's him taking pictures of prostitutes, doing porn magazine shoots, and then being a cinematographer on a film set. And I kind of just like that first act where it was just like a day in the life of this creep serial killer. He has a very ordinary life. He was very awkward. He has like some kind of social problem. Maybe he had a too sheltered childhood. There's little elements like that, but overall it kind of just felt like a good slice of life of a serial killer. The subsequent two acts is what kind of loses me a bit more. I find myself less interested in those acts. But that's just me personally talking. I think in the second act, the pacing kind of slows down. There are some cool kills, some very good scenes of high suspense, but other than that, I kind of wasn't as interested. About the time where the love interest is kind of introduced, that's kind of where I kind of lost interest. I liked the movie much more when it was just him just doing his thing. And I kind of have this problem with Psycho as well. Spoiler alerts, I guess, because I'm going to be talking about Psycho tomorrow. But I like the themes it brings up. It's some really eerie, some really cool scenes. But given the era in which these came out, it's a very surface level exploration of it, which is understandable because the thought of talking about sadomasochism and Freudian relationships in film, it was pretty taboo for the year 1960. So that's why I respect it, but it's kind of something like I want a bit more out of my movie. I will say the one thing I do really like about this movie is I really like the dialogue. The dialogue is killer in this movie. There's some really good bits of dialogue in here. I wrote one in particular I like. So there's a scene where the serial killer is in a kind of like a corner store and someone's buying a magazine, and the clerk asks the guy, "Do you know what kind of magazines sell well?" And the killer says, "Those with girls on the front covers and no front covers on the girls."
Got a question for you. Which magazine sells the most copies?
Those with girls on the front covers and no front covers on the girls.
Exactly. It's just the same with the work you do for me.
Perfect line of dialogue. Reminds me of Norm Macdonald. He was always obsessed with having jokes with punchlines that kind of went with the setup. It's just like a retooling of the setup. It's a very funny movie, which is kind of surprising. A movie like Psycho kind of takes itself very seriously, but this movie kind of has a weird, twisted sense of humor. It's set up earlier in the film that the movie the serial killer is being a cinematographer on. The girl has a tough time pretending to faint, the actress that is.
No, dear. Cut it.
So later on in the movie, the actress opens up a chest, and in the chest there's a dead woman, and she faints, and then the director just walks in on that very moment and says, "Hey, that's the wrong moment, you shouldn't faint there."
The silly bitch, she's fainted in the wrong scene.
There's some really weird moments of dark, twisted dialogue that I liked a lot. And there's a lot of cool meta commentary that I didn't know until I researched the movie a bit more. So the killer has these home videos that his dad recorded of the killer when he was a kid with his dad. And in the videos, the dad is played by the director, and the son is his son in real life, which is kind of creepy and weird. And when the movie came out, a lot of people criticized the director for doing that. And I can understand why, because it's a movie about a serial killer and you're kind of putting a self-insert in it. But I think it's more a movie about the obsession of catching everything on camera. It kind of reminded me of American Beauty. They had that character who's just obsessed with capturing everything on camera. Same kind of idea here. They were kind of looking a bit too much into it back then, I think. It's a weird self-insert, but it delivers some pretty cool meta commentary. So those are kind of the elements that stuck out to me. Will I ever watch this movie again? No. I think there's like movies that are like this that have been done in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and today that have similar themes, explores them a bit more interestingly. So there's no need for me to rewatch Peeping Tom, but it's a really good nugget to see like a very influential movie, how it influenced people like Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola and John Carpenter. So for that, I really like the movie. Guys, have you seen Peeping Tom? Did you like it? Comment below, let me know, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for more Garage Slasher-thon.